I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining today. My name is Ann Kilby. I'm your host for this session. I'm the Associate Dean of MBA Admissions here at Georgetown McDonough. And really the purpose of this session is to help you get prepared to submit an application for the full-time flex or flex online program. So our full-time program, our part-time program, or our online MBA program here at Georgetown. Just a brief bit about me. This is my 18th year in higher education, where I've spent the last 8 here at Georgetown McDonough. I truly love it here. It is my home. I'm very proud to represent this institution, and I'm happy to go through information today that will help you better understand what it looks like to apply. So, great. What we're going to go through today, we're going to go through our holistic review of applications. So our admissions process is extremely well-rounded in that we look across many different metrics and components to make an informed decision whether or not we believe you're a good fit at Georgetown and whether or not we feel like you will thrive in our community. So these are the buckets. These are the topics that we will be going through in more detail. And just, sorry, an administrative note, I will save time at the end for your questions. So just know we will have time for that. Okay, so let's start taking a deep dive into each of these different application components. So first, the academic history. So the academic history is going to be one of our areas of assessment where we are looking for evidence to predict your academic readiness. So we are trying to predict whether or not you will be successful in the MBA classroom by looking at your past performance in academia. So the things that we are reviewing would be how you progressed in your academic history, how your GPA or grades changed over time. We're going to pay attention to MBA relevant coursework, especially quantitative coursework, given the quantitative rigor of the program. We will take into account the rigor of your major and your institution, so we will contextualize that. And then we will look at your optional essay, if there is one, in case there is any context that you share there. So what I mean by that is if you are someone who had external events, factors that affected your academic performance in undergraduate, maybe some examples could be a health issue, or you were working 2 jobs to pay for tuition, or your parents went through a divorce, whatever it might be. We find hearing that information to be helpful to prevent us from making assumptions and to just offer more context into reviewing your academic history. So you'll see the charts here on the side of 80th percent bands of the GPAs. These are on a 4.0 scale, and this comes from our class profile. So for the students who chose to enroll in us in Georgetown for the class that started this fall, 2025. So you'll see the band there, the 80% band. The average for both tends to be around a 3.3 or 3.4. And again, that's on a 4.0 scale. For test scores, so the first question would be, are you eligible for a test waiver, or do you have to take a test? And even if you are eligible for a test waiver, do you still want to take a test? So our test waiver policy is on the Georgetown McDonough MBA website. You can use our search bar, or you can just use your favorite search engine and search for Georgetown MBA test waiver. It should come up. And we hope it is a pretty black and white policy where you should be able to predetermine if you would be approved a test waiver or not. And it has to do with your academic history. If you studied a STEM major discipline and your performance. And if non-STEM, there's some secondary criteria that would be required to grant you a waiver. If you do take a test, it's reference point to know that 39% of our applicants are taking the GRE. Most are still taking the GMAT, now the GMAT Focus. And we do have some folks who choose to take the executive assessment. So we accept those three tests, GMAT, GRE, and executive assessment. If you don't already have a test selected, I give you the guidance of taking a practice test across two or three of them and see which one you're most naturally inclined towards. I've seen folks perform very differently on one versus another type of test. Keep in mind that your academic history and your test scores are, they balance each other, they support each other, they can overcompensate for each other to help us, again, predict your readiness for the MBA classroom. So they're viewed together rather than in isolation. We have some statistics around our 80th percent bands for the full-time and the flex. Anytime you see flex, you can assume it's associated with flex and flex online, those audiences. So you'll see GMAT Focus, GRE, and executive assessment scores. Work experience is the last quantitative measure that we'll be looking at. So for work experience, first we're just going to talk about the quantity of your work. So the quantity, you see the 80th percent range there over in the chart. Typically the average is around 5 years. And how we define this work experience, it's post-undergrad, full-time work that is paid. So those are the three criteria. So post-undergrad, full-time work that is paid. Now, absolutely, the admissions committee will take into account any volunteerism, part-time work, internships, as we consider the skills you've developed, the experiences you've had, and what you'll be able to contribute to our community. But in terms of reportable work experience, the industry standard is full-time work, paid post-undergrad. And then while we're on the topic of work experience, just to talk about the quality of work experience. So with quality, we look at your progression of your career, your leadership experience. And so we will look at how you have not only progressed from a title, from a salary standpoint, but also the scope of work, the projects that you've taken on, maybe the people that you've managed, committees you've been on. And then I already mentioned the average is typically between 5 to 6 years. I am worried that my Zoom is frozen because now everything has gone black for me. I apologize. You might be able to see me or not. I'm afraid I might have to restart my Zoom. I'm so sorry about that. Let me see if I can troubleshoot real quick. Oh, no, I'm back. Okay. Can someone chat in just to give me the peace of mind that you can hear and see me clearly? I just got a chat, but it's not letting me open it. Goodness. I've never had this much trouble with my Zoom. I am so sorry. I'm assuming the chat was giving me an affirmative. So I'm going to keep rolling with it. Okay, so we talked about the quality of your work experience. So back to the start of, we've reviewed these three buckets, and now we're going to move on to the next three buckets, more of the qualitative measures of your application. So starting with your letter of recommendation, for the MBA program at Georgetown, we require one letter of recommendation. We allow up to two, but I'll tell you 90% of folks submit the one recommendation because it's sufficient. It's what we're asking for. Thank you, your chat came through. Perfect. Okay, thank you so much, Joseph, for confirming, giving me peace of mind. All right. So with the recommendation letter, We have a strong preference for your current direct supervisor. And the reason why I we have that preference is because that person should know you the best in a professional capacity, should know you on a day-to-day basis, as well as, from a more of a pattern, goal setting, how you've been developing. So we have a strong preference for your current direct supervisor. If you are a flex or a flex online candidate, we really need the recommendation to be from your current direct supervisor. The reason being is that you're planning to work full time while participating in the program part time. So we want to hear that your supervisor is supportive and might be willing to give you flexibility when needed for recruitment events, or not, maybe not recruitment events, but special events, class events. There will be times where you might need a little bit of flexibility. We want to hear that they are in support. Now, the times where I think two recommendations would make sense would be if you're an entrepreneur, so you don't have a current direct supervisor. So that may look like you requesting a client, maybe someone from your board or a mentor. Please don't submit, no one submit academic recommendations. They're just not relevant to us given your years since you've been away from school. So professional recommendations. And the last bit of advice I would give you on recommendations is the best recommendation I see are those who are sharing information that really aligns with how you've been describing yourself in the application. So it's reinforcing, it's validating. If anything, they are able to provide more examples to help illustrate why you are an XYZ person. So how you can get aligned with your recommender is to coach them, is to share with them why you are applying to the MBA, why you chose Georgetown, what you're hoping to achieve, some highlights from your career successes, so that you all can, again, reinforce each other. And people always appreciate when you equip them. Personal essays. So you will have one required written essay and then one video essay, and you might submit an optional essay. So we'll talk through each of these. For the required written essay, we offer you 3 different prompts, and you choose the one you'd like to write on. And these are just shorthand names of the prompts, but each prompt has many focusing questions that we'd like you to address. So my first advice for the written essay is please make sure you're actually answering the prompt and the full extent of the prompt. We can tell when you are repurposing other schools' essays. We're like, this seems to have a theme more of this rather than what we asked. So please be mindful of the prompt. And also I would advise you to be strategic in your prompt selection. So see which one really resonates with you, which one you feel like in the dressing you can best showcase yourself or your achievements or who you are as a person, and consider what you hope the admissions committee takes away from reading that essay. Do you want us to say, wow, Jared had, continuously collaborates with teams. He gave several examples of where he's such a team player and supports, his fellow team members. Is that the takeaway you're looking for? So I like to think about the end result and help that inform the writing. And then, of course, we are looking at your written essay in terms of grammar, punctuation, flow, transitions, just your general writing ability. So do proofread. And if you have a friend who's skilled at writing, ask them to proofread for you as well. Use your resources. For the video essay, this is also a requirement. It is 1 minute in length, and you are assessed on content rather than production. So please don't put pressure on needing it to be anything fancy. Most videos we see are either done on like a work laptop or your phone. Um, and what you're addressing there is this topic, whether it's a new hobby, a fun adventure, or a simple pleasure. In 1 minute, share what has recently brought you joy outside of work. So, throughout your application, we've gotten to know you as a professional and what you've done at work, what you hope to do professionally. So, this is really an opportunity to get to know you as a person. And at Georgetown, we believe in cura personalis, care of the whole person. We're offering you a general management curriculum covering multiple disciplines. We believe in a community of diversity. That's one of our Jesuit principles. So there are many reasons why we ask you this video essay. Also, it helps to humanize you. It forces us to look beyond the paper, see you as a person. It puts a face to the name. We get to feel your presence. We get to see your style and how you present. So make sure it really is authentic to you. And again, maybe a good time to use a resource is someone who knows you really well, get them to gut check, watch it for you and say, does this seem authentic to me or does it seem like I'm trying to fit into some kind of box? So please make it you because that also will make it memorable too. It's the video essay. Oh, and then optional essays. So optional essays, I know I already mentioned one example where you could submit an optional essay, and that has to do with your academic history and maybe addressing any external factors that happened at that time. The optional essay is a catch-all. It's an opportunity for you to address any potential issues or concerns, especially if there's context or lessons that you could share you learned from those experiences. Otherwise, don't feel any pressure to submit an optional essay. It's mainly what we see it for is to address something where clarification or context would be beneficial. The resume. So your resume is an opportunity for us to get a better understanding of the work you've done professionally. Depending on your format or style of your resume, you might also have some personal things or skills there. We do not have a resume template, so we see a lot of different formats. However, I will tell you the industry standard in terms of length is if you have under 10 years of work experience, your resume should be 1 page. If you have more than 10 years, it can be 2 pages. When drafting your resume, similar to when you tailor your resume for a job that you're seeking, you should tailor your resume for the schools. So do your research, identify places of mutual fit where, wow, I see Georgetown values global experiences. Let me make sure to talk about this global client I supported. Or, wow, Georgetown values service. Let me mention this volunteerism. Or, well, Georgetown values collaboration over competition. Let me talk about, let me showcase this time when I was part of a team. I don't know, just some examples. Also keep in mind that the admissions committee is made up of individuals with all different academic backgrounds, education, industry backgrounds. We're a diverse group of people with different perspectives. And so you don't want to assume that we know the jargon of your industry. So please write your resume in a way that a layman could understand it. No acronyms, no industry terms. And I would really recommend that you quantify your successes as best as possible to help us really, to help us easily understand what you've achieved. So that will vary depending on your scope of work. You're going to know best how success is defined and quantified in your work, but that could look like, money saved through a certain process or technology that you proposed. It could look like number of projects managed, Obviously, if you're in sales, sales goals met, um, number of clients, there are many ways in which I hope you find you can quantify. And then if you have an employment gap that is greater than 3 months, we will ask you to address it. There's a text field in the application where you'll share with us you were laid off or you voluntarily left because of a reason, whatever it may be. And again, just like your academic optional essay, it's to prevent us from making assumptions and just to be more informed and reviewing your background. And also job recruiters are going to ask. And so we want to get ahead of that as well. And then lastly, on this section is the interview. So the interview is by invite only, meaning our process for admissions review. We receive your application and then we will do what's called process your application, make sure that everything that we need is there. So it's a complete application, nothing's blurry or your name is missing on a transcript, whatever it may be. So we process your application. And then once it's deemed complete, then it can be read, it can be reviewed. So then we go into reading applications and we read randomly, meaning there is a virtual bucket of applications, and application readers will just reach in virtually, grab an application, and then start the review workflow. So the timing in which you move through the workflow has to do with when you're randomly selected. It has no, it is not, doesn't have anything to do with the strength of your application. We do no kind of filtering. It's all random. Okay, so we're reading randomly. If you are deemed eligible to be considered for admission on paper, then we would invite you for interview. So if you've been invited to interview, you've gone through a first screen where at least on paper, we want to get to know you more. We want to advance you in the process. And then the purpose of the interview, kind of similar to the video essay, is to humanize you, and to go more in depth. So to have a conversation around your goals, where Georgetown can fit into those goals. It's a behavioral interview. So we'll ask you questions around some of your experiences, maybe your leadership experiences or team experiences, global experiences, or diversity experiences. And so you want to prepare for the interview just like you would prepare for a job interview. You'll do your research, you'll come ready with knowing why you applied to the MBA, why you chose Georgetown to apply to. I would advise you to practice your overview story. So the first question in probably most MBA interviews will be something like, tell me about yourself, tell me about your background. They might go ahead and combine it and say, tell me about your background and why you're interested in MBA. This opening question, the response should be a few minutes in length. At maximum, maybe 5 minutes. So please practice. We have absolutely had people who answer this question 10 minutes, 15 minutes. The interview is only 30 minutes total, where usually about 25 minutes is with you answering questions, and the last few minutes are you asking us questions. So you don't want to take up most of your time just by recapping your background. We want to dig in. We want to ask you specific questions to get to know you better. So practice that background overview, academics and professional overview, in 5 minutes or less. In terms of who could interview you, it could be several different types of people. It could be an admissions committee member like myself. It could be a current MBA student, or it could be an alum. And you will not know who is interviewing you until you get to the interview. So you need to make sure you're prepared with questions to ask any type of person. because the types of questions you ask a current student might be different than those you ask of a staff or an alum. The reason why we do interviews this way is to give you all maximum availability for scheduling. All of us put in our interview slots in our interviewing system, and then you all choose the time that is most convenient for you, recognizing we have folks interviewing all over the world. The interview is blind, so actually it's double blind. You all don't know who's interviewing you, and your interviewer has not read your MBA application. They only have your resume. That's done on purpose to prevent them from having bias coming in. So they don't know that you have a 3.8 GPA, or they don't know that you have a 2.5 GPA. They don't know. So it won't affect that interview. Lastly, modality. We offer interviews either virtually over Zoom or in person. And for in person, you have some options. We always invite you to come to campus. We would love to host you here. However, we recognize that might not be accessible for everyone. So virtual is always available to you, as well as we travel. So every year we travel to different locations and host interviews there on site. And when you are invited to interview, you will see all the options available to you. So you'll see if we're offering interviews in New York, for example, and can choose to register there virtually or in person on campus. So all options. We do not put different weight on one modality versus another because we know we need to be inclusive and offer options that are accessible to everyone. So you choose what's best for you. Okay, so this big page of infographics is our class profile of the full-time program. So this is the full-time class that started this past fall 2025. They'll graduate in May 2027, so they're the class of 2027. There were 248 of them. You see some demographic details up here. You see the top of the funnel, so the total applications. You're going to see average age, work experience, GPA. You'll see this chart on undergraduate fields of study. And I feel like this is such a myth buster that only 30% of folks studied business in undergrad. Again, we value a community of diversity, and that's defined in a lot of different ways. One way is through your undergraduate field of study. What's most important for us is that we believe you'll be successful in the MBA classroom. So we're going to look at, as we discussed earlier, your quantitative readiness, and overall your ability to perform in a classroom. So your academic history. You'll see our global diversity here. So 40 countries were represented in the full-time class, and here they all are. 66% spoke more than one language. 51% lived, worked, or studied abroad. You see some testing data up here. Again, we already reviewed some of this together. And then the top 6 current industries. So this is pre-MBA industries. Okay. Oh, and then I didn't say the split between international and domestic. Now for the Flex MBA class, so this class again started in fall 2025. This is traditionally a 3-year program, though it is flexible duration. But the average we typically see is 3 years. So they'll graduate, most of them will graduate in May 2028. This was a class of 67, and again, flex means full-time working, part-time studying with us. And Flex MBA candidates have to live in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area because you come on campus for your classes. Typically 2 days a week for class and maybe another day a week for special events or teamwork, project work. Here's the breakdown of some demographics, the top of funnel for applications, average age, work experience, GPA, again, the diversity of field of study, and again, a relatively small percentage of business. Really great gender parity, so 49% self-identify as women. Even though you are required to live in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, we still have global representation. So likely either dual citizens or folks that are sponsored to work here. 39% more than one language, top 5 industries, and then testing data. Okay. Flex MBA Online. So this is our part-time online program. So you can live anywhere where you are plus or minus 3 hours time zone. So you can live basically in the Americas. And the reason why is because your classes are from approximately 6:30 to 9:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then team coordination, with your peers in the class, we want to make sure there is a time zone alignment. And you are working full-time and taking this program part-time and online. Now, if you do participate in Flex MBA Online and are located in the DMV, you are welcome to take electives on campus, do recruitment events and things on campus. So you kind of get the best of both worlds. If you need more flexibility to be online, but local, you can come to campus. We would welcome you. Class size of 48. Here you see some demographic details. Total applications, top of funnel, average age, work experience, GPA, very similar field of study background compared to the Flex. 10 countries represented. I think that was also the same for Flex. 44% as self-identify as women, so getting close to gender parity, which is awesome. 43% speak a different language. Here are the backgrounds here. So government is actually the top, but it's still only 17%. Testing data. Okay. Now, we recognize that coming back to school, higher education is an investment. It's a commitment. You are investing in your future, in your development, in your career, and you should expect to see ROI and returns for life. This is a degree, a reputational association, a skill set, a network of people that will live with you for life, not literally live with you. So with that being said, you absolutely need to take this decision seriously. And to do so, we want to equip you with cost information, finance information. So the full-time program, this is the cost per year. This is a flat rate per year. And this is the cost, this is the tuition cost for the class for your 2026 to 2027 year. We announce our tuition a year at a time. So this is just for 2026. What did I say? 2026 to 2027. So fall 2026, spring 2027. And then we'll announce the next year. Typically, we do increase our tuition each year because of inflation. Now, it's worth noting that 52% of the class that started this fall 2025 received a scholarship from us. So over half received a scholarship from us. And the average award of those 52% was $25,000. And that's the average. We go up to a full ride tuition scholarship. For Flex and Flex Online, these are pay-as-you-go models where you have a cost per credit. So how much you pay per year depends on how many courses, how many credits you took that year. So these are estimates based on typical curriculum. While full-time is a flat rate per year, these are adjustable. So for example, if you need to slow down the cost, you slow down the pacing of the degree. Okay. So for Flex, the estimated cost per year is 66-ish thousand, 48%, so almost half of the incoming students in fall for Flex received a scholarship from us. Your scholarship award for both Flex and Flex Online are noticeably different than full-time because you all are working full-time and earning an income. So our scholarship budgets are less. So 11,790. And this is a one-time, these are one-time awards, while full-time, it's a per year. For Flex MBA Online, again, this is an estimate based on our curriculum of what you would pay per year. And then 44% received an award from our office, so getting close to half. And then 12,000-ish was the average award. Every candidate who is going to be admitted is automatically considered for a scholarship. So you do not have to request it, signal anything to us. You will automatically be reviewed. And you will find out your scholarship package in your admit letter. So on decision day, if you are admitted, you'll find out if you also received a scholarship. We review you for all awards that you're eligible for. So again, you don't have to write out any kind of eligibility. This at the bottom here is a sample of some of the partnerships that we have. So it's not exhaustive. So it's worth noting that not only do we have internal partners at Georgetown, we have external partners. And while all of the money, all of the scholarship money comes from Georgetown, there are many benefits that come with being named a Reaching Out Fellow, RAMBA Fellow, for example, or a Consortium Fellow, or a Forte Fellow. Usually the benefits have to do with access to their annual conferences, which are usually national conferences, their network, their resources, their recruitment partners. Some of them offer coaching or preparation even before the MBA, like Forte Launch or Consortium or MLT have all of these preparatory programs. So some of these you could get benefits from and joining prior to applying to the MBA, and usually they are affinity or mission based. Some of them, it's once you're named a fellow with us through your scholarship award, then do you get that association. You can see a full list of scholarships and partners on our website, and there's a lot more detail there as well. So here's a cute little display of you. This is you running through the admissions process. So you submit your application, we review your documents to make sure we have everything we need, then we read your application, invite you to interview if you're deemed eligible on paper to be considered for admission. Then we have committee review, admissions committee review, AdCom review, and then we release your decisions. From a date specific and round specific standpoint, this is what that looks like. So again, application deadline. All decisions are released on the same day for each round. So no rolling release, it all happens on decision day. We are entering round 3. So April 1st is the application deadline next week. And then everyone who applies with a complete application by April 1 will hear from us on May 13th if you've been admitted, waitlisted, or denied. And if you've been admitted, then we need you to accept your offer and make your first deposit June 3rd and your second deposit by July 1. Each deposit is $2,000, and these deposits are part of your tuition payments, not in addition to. And lastly, I'm going to stay on this page while I go through your questions. And these are QR codes of ways to continue to connect with us. So the top left, unless it's mirrored on your screen, but the chat with MBA admissions and current students, that'll take you to a chat page where you can text chat with a variety of people. You'll see profiles, pictures, so that you can choose who to chat with based on your preferences. The one beneath that is where you can download our brochure, so request more information. Top on the other side is where you can be directed to our website. So that's the Georgetown MBA web page. And then lastly is a QR code to take you to our events page. And that events page will show this event, for example, and other upcoming events. You'll notice we conduct events around the world or virtually through different partners, different formats, different focuses. So hopefully there's something for everyone. And please take a look and see what you'd like to register for. Okay, so now is the time. If you have questions for anything having to do with admissions, the application, or the program, please put it in the chat box, and I hope to answer those as soon as my computer stops freezing. I'm at school, so I'm not sure why my Zoom is misbehaving, and I apologize again. While my Zoom is loading your chat box, if anyone wants to try coming off mute and asking your question, I'm also happy to answer it that way. Mm. A question I know you all are going to have is, oh, you can't come off mute. Sorry. Okay. Wah, wah. Sorry for that. A question, and I do see your questions now. Thank you. Um, a question I know you're going to ask that I should go ahead and address is it too late to apply, or what are my chances for round three, or even are you going to have a rolling period after round three? So it's absolutely not too late to apply for domestic or international candidates. For everyone, you can and should still apply. If you are ready to apply, apply. We still absolutely have seats available. We are offering a round three because we need a round three. So please submit if the timing is appropriate for you. In terms of a rolling period, so accepting applications after round three, it's to be determined. Every year we wait to see how our most recent batch, our round two batch, who were admitted on this past Friday, how they yield, as well as what our application volume looks like for round three. And then we'll make an informed decision if we need a rolling period. My instinct is that we likely will for all three programs, full-time, flex, and flex online, but we won't formally announce that until after round three. Okay, so going through your questions, this first question is the video essay required or optional? The video essay is required. So that is a required component in your application. And again, it's 1 minute in length. Please complete it on your phone, your work laptop, whatever is available to you, and make sure you answer the prompt about an interest, a hobby, a passion, where you spend your time outside of work. Okay. Okay, this is a great question. Asking about years of work experience and whether this is something to address in an optional essay. Yes, that should have been an example I used, so thank you for asking it. So as I mentioned, the average years of work experience is 5 years. If you are someone who has, while our 80% range is 3 years to 8 years, if you're someone who has under 3 years, I do think it's worth submitting an optional essay explaining why now for the MBA. If you have over 8 years, I also think an optional essay is beneficial for you to address why now, why an MBA versus an executive MBA, and what flexibility would you be willing to offer on your job recruitment goals? Because our recruiters have a profile in mind. It's what we display on our class profiles. So if you fall outside of that, we might need more options for you. So hearing what you'd be happy with, not asking you to compromise, but what would be satisfactory for you, geography, industry function, if you have over 8 years. So for this person who asked, you have 4 years, an optional essay would not be needed. You're still very close to average. Okay, this next question. Oh, this is great. This is a very admissions committee question that we discuss. So um, when looking for quantitative evidence to predict your quantitative acumen and readiness, we're looking to see, first of all, if you've taken quantitative courses, and then secondly, how you performed in them. So there's absolutely something to be said for getting exposure to the topics. So maybe you've taken a set of courses, but your performance varied. Or you've taken just a couple, but you did really well. So these are the kinds of things that we talk about and think about in the admissions committee. For this particular example, you've got a mixture of B's and C's, but it sounds like you've taken many quantitative courses, some of them being advanced. I'm not concerned about B's or C's. But keep in mind, academic history is reviewed in concert with your standardized test. So these really support, balance, overcompensate one another. So for the April 1 deadline, application deadline, and again, that is our round 3 application deadline, decisions are released on May 13th. That's decision day. For folks, I think there are some folks putting questions in the Q&A, and while that intuitively makes sense, given my Zoom troubles, I'm going to ask you to put them in the chat box because I have this box open and it seems to be working, and I'm nervous to push any other buttons. So please, let's focus all our questions in the chat box. This next question asks about scholarship consideration. Every candidate who is admitted is automatically considered for a scholarship. That is not a separate application. And you find out if you received a scholarship within your admit letter. And so, no, you do not have to apply for a scholarship. We use already what you submitted in your application to assess your eligibility across every type of award. So this person is asking about dual degrees. Let's talk about it. So we have 4 dual degrees with the full-time MBA program. So with dual degrees, you can either apply to each school prior to matriculation. So in your case, it would be apply to the MBA program, apply to the JD program. If you're admitted to both, we'll merge them prior to matriculation and put you on a dual degree track. Or you can apply within your first year of either program. So if you are first year JD, you can apply within that year for the MBA. If you're a first year MBA, you can apply to the JD, then merge it then at that point for a dual. So the 4 dual degrees we have, one is with the law school with your JD, with the medical school for an MD, and with McCourt School of Public Policy for an MPP, and then lastly with Walsh School of Foreign Service for a Master's of Science in Foreign Service. So those are the full dual degrees. For all of them, you can apply to the dual degree program, the other program, either before matriculation or in your first year of either program. For the MD program, the MD MBA dual, you can apply actually your first, second, or third year as an MD student to the MBA to make it a dual. The benefit of having a dual degree is you are shrinking the total time you would be in school with us. So a 3-year JD, a 2-year MBA combines, instead of 5 years, a 4-year program because core courses in one count as electives in the other. And then you graduate with 2 degrees. As an alternative or plan B for folks who are interested in getting exposure across the university, you can cross-register. We allow up to 12 and a half credits, which typically is 3 or 4 classes at one of those 4, at any of those 4 schools. So law, med, foreign service, or policy for your electives. Okay, just trying to scroll. right after this, I'm going to restart my computer because this is very frustrating. This session is being recorded, and if you would like a copy of that, we will happily give it to you, but it is being recorded. Okay. Okay, Ooh, it just came back up. Okay. In terms of test, so this next question is around test and test waivers. So we do offer test waivers. I encourage you to look up our test waiver policy on our website. Again, use any search engine. You can just say Georgetown MBA test waiver, and that should bring up the appropriate page. The test waivers for full-time flex and flex online are all the same. The process is different. So for the full-time MBA, you apply for your test waiver in advance of submitting your application so that you know going into the application if it's required of you or not. For Flex and Flex MBA Online, you apply for the test waiver within the MBA application. For everyone, you should be able to use the policy to predict whether or not you'll be approved. It's a pretty straightforward policy. So if you're approved a test waiver, it means we believe we have enough evidence in your academic history to make a prediction about your academic readiness and don't require a test. Okay. Okay, if you are a candidate who has where your section scores on the standardized test are different, you perform much better on one versus the other, then we will then turn to other parts of your application to ensure your readiness in the section that was lower. I would say if you have under a 50th percentile in any section, that will um, warrant us to investigate more. So for example, if your quantitative section's under the 50th percentile, then we'll look for quantitative courses in undergrad and how you performed on those. Certainly, if we see you do have a section where it's a high score, then we know at least that there's not a testing issue. It's not that you don't do well at test. It's more specific to that topic area. For the individual asking about, so it sounds like you were waitlisted in round two. You might have attended. I offered a waitlist coaching webinar just yesterday, and that was recorded as well. And the purpose of that webinar is to help you craft an action plan for next steps. If you are unable to attend it, please email us to request the recording. You can email us at georgetownmba@georgetown.edu to go through that. And I go through main reasons why people are waitlisted as well. The last question I'm seeing is asking about the recommendation and the process for the recommendation letter. So in your MBA application, and thank you, Austin, for coming. Thank you. In your MBA application, we ask you for contact details for your recommender, their name and their email address. Once you enter that information, they will be sent the recommendation form to fill out. Once they fill out that form, it automatically attaches to your application. Um, Unfortunately, you do not know if they've submitted that recommendation or not, so it is best for you all to coordinate and to give them plenty of time prior to the application deadline. Typically, what I hear as courteous is giving them 2 weeks to submit your recommendation. The recommendation itself, there are questions that they are answering having to do with essentially your strengths and your areas for improvement, how they know you, and then they are rating you on specific qualities. Okay. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for staying on. We are right on time. Thank you for your questions, your attention, and want to wish you the best of luck as you move forward in the admissions process. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us if we can offer you some assistance. And thank you for your interest in Georgetown. Have a great rest of your day and week ahead. Bye.